What up? Yes, this is a coming out story. I know. This video is probably gonna go exactly how you think it will. I'll probably cry, might scream a little, because this is a really fucking vulnerable and emotional moment for me, where I'm opening up and letting the whole world judge me as I talk about the traumatic events in my life that make me feel like a broken person. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe and smack that like button. Smack it really fucking hard. So, what made me want to make this melodramatic sob story of a video is watching a Hulu high school drama about a young twink trying to figure out his sexuality called Love Victor. When the AI who monitors my every move 24/7 clocked my gay ass and suggested the show to me on Instagram, I was super fucking excited about it, because TV is healing for me. When I'm sad, I find it helpful to watch someone else go through the same issues I have and see how they deal with the misery. It's just so much easier to deal with your problems when Hollywood spells it out for you. And when Victor outlined the theme of the show in the first episode through DMing Simon, screw you for having the most perfect accepting parents. For some of us, it's not that easy. I just need you to know you're very lucky, Simon. Sincerely, Victor. I thought this show was meant for me, because this is exactly how I felt when I watched Love, Simon. When I came out, it didn't end with me Frenching my one true love on top of a Ferris wheel as my entire high school class watched and screamed as if it was a gay pride parade. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. It was a lot less sexy and a lot more crying. Now, I don't want to be seen as those gays that make their sexuality their entire personality, because I am so much more than that. I like fashion, I'm getting into makeup, but the more that I talk about it, the more I realize that most of my issues can be traced back to this period of my life, and how it basically made me into the person that I am today. So when I thought this show would tackle the same experiences that I had, a coming out story that isn't exactly a fairy tale, I felt a strong connection to it. And after finishing it, I realized I hated absolutely all of it. First of all, the writing blows. These are the most insufferable characters I've ever seen. Why are they dancing to Carly Rae Jepsen and saying the word hashtag unironically? And maybe you could say that this show is meant for the youth and not you, you sad aging crone. Which, fine, but does that mean it has to be bad? Also, is it really meant for the youth? Some of the things they say are absolutely insane. Apparently Benji's a teenage alcoholic who drove through a Wendy's. And that one scene where Benji teaches Victor how to use an espresso machine.
And then pack it real tight. See how tight that is? Mm-hmm. I am so sorry.
That's clearly an allegory for cum. So it seems like this. I find it very strange that Victor is a high schooler that doesn't know people have foot fetishes and gay people can play sports. I knew people had foot fetishes since I was like 12, but maybe they are onto something with gay people and sports balls. I don't even know how basketballs works. What do you do with all those balls? My dad didn't play catch with me growing up. But outside of being bored and upset that I wasted 4 hours of my life on this show that I'll never get back, I found myself extremely annoyed with how they portrayed Victor's struggles. I related most to Victor's struggles with his homophobic family. I mean, it's the main topic of this video, and that experience has imprinted a burn mark on my soul that I'll never forget. So I'd say this isn't my first rodeo. And when I talked about gay people with my family, it did not end in us playing a make-believe game based on the hit Disney movie Frozen.
I
got your power! Ice!
But I did think the final scene in that same episode was super impactful, where Victor's dad told Victor about how proud he was of him for standing up to his grandparents, being homophobic to his friends, giving Victor hope that he's open-minded by saying he doesn't care that his friends are gay, and then completely crushing that hope in the span of 5 seconds when he turns around and says,
I just hope that Tito's wrong and your little brother doesn't turn out that way. Anyway.
Heartbreaking. It's like my soul got shanked in its sleep. I thought the writing and acting in this scene was very well done. The total 180 Victor's dad did, the complete look of defeat on Victor's face, but out of all the songs they could have picked for this scene, why is it this one? This might be my own personal interpretation, but I think the melody and lyrics used made the scene feel hopeful. I think it's a song you'd use right before someone finds out they got into the college of their dreams. I think it's a song you'd use when two love interests finally admit that they like each other. I think it's a song you'd use right before a school dance like they used it in 13 Reasons Why. What I'm trying to get at is, I don't think they allowed this sad moment to be a sad moment, and I wish they did a better job at expressing the pain. This continues throughout the entire show. It starts off with that promise and intention of tackling a coming out narrative that is the opposite of the idealistic and romantic fairy tale that is Love, Simon. But I felt like it just stuck to that forced narrative that says, the world is such a nice and happy place where you get everything you want, and we should just spend all day hugging and kissing each other. I mean, Victor has a great mentor that helps him navigate his sexuality that he found through his Instagram DMs, finds an amazing community through. All of his friends just know all of the right things to say, and he ends up with the man of his dreams after having minuscule interaction and zero chemistry with him. Oh my god, don't even get me started on Benji and Victor. The only reason why I can think of as to why they ended up together is their one night where they danced to the hit single Call Me Maybe and bonded over their strong, unshakable mutual love of Carly Rae Jepsen.
Hey, I just met you.
I hate them so much. This narrative is frustrating to me because this isn't what happened when I came out. My experience made me see the world as not a nice and happy place where everything works out just cuz. I understand living with the pain of feeling rejected by your family, and I wanted to find comfort in a story that understood how I felt and learn from the answer to the pain. And this optimistic story of love and happily ever afters didn't do anything for me. But also, I know I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the first season. The story they were trying to tell here was definitely not meant for me, and it's about something completely different. The main plot line was more about Victor coming to terms with his sexuality. And while I wish they made that conflict more engaging, emotionally impactful, and feel less Sesame Street, it can be really hard to accept who you are. Fear of how the people in your life are going to react and how this could completely turn your life upside down and how that can affect you from your constant internal debates about simply being honest with who you are. The struggles and emotions from that are completely valid. And the showrunner wanted to focus on these feelings because of his own personal experiences. I can understand this, but I can't really relate to it on a personal level because I've never really had the issue of feeling like I had to maintain the illusion that I was straight. This is a picture of me at 6 years old, and honestly what I think people still see when they look at me to this day. It wasn't exactly shocking news when I came out. So sure, I have an issue with how boring the show is, but if someone who is struggling with this issue and saw something like Love, Victor, maybe that can make them feel less lonely and help them accept who they are. There's also a victory in having a positive queer TV show. I mean, after being used to gay stories that are centered around tragedy and hardship, it's nice to see a story that doesn't end with someone like me seeing his loved ones die or get beat to death. Hearing these messages of how important it is to find love and acceptance in a chosen family, and that it's okay to accept yourself, can make a world of a difference. And I mean, aside from their inability to write a satisfying plotline and interesting characters, which I will never let go, most of my frustrations are really from the show not giving me what I wanted. I want to believe that message of hope and possibility too, but I think for me to get it, I have to watch something bittersweet like Alice Wu's Half of It. The reason why I love and resonate with Alice Wu's work so much is because it's so authentically human. It shows that even though we struggle and don't always get what we want, that doesn't mean we can't find happiness, and that's something that I need to hear. But even though Alice Wu's work is healing for me, after seeing how frustrated I was after watching Love, Victor, and just events in my life, I realized that I'm still trying to find an answer to how to deal with my pain. And I know Hollywood can't fix me. I have to do that. So after painfully watching Love, Victor, I realized that I want to figure out my shit. And the only way I can do that is to look inward and work on myself so I can maximize my most optimal level of happiness and become the best version of myself that I know I can be. Fuck my ass, right? I didn't want to make this video for the longest time because I didn't want to become one of those YouTubers that make their entire channel about them being gay. Because I can do so much more than that. I can make videos about room tours and, makeup? I'm also afraid of people seeing this and think that I have a victim mentality. That all I want from this is attention and pity from other people. Which I want to be very clear. Of course I want attention, but I will be damned if people think that I want them to feel bad for me, because I have worked my entire life not to be in that position. I'm making this video to help me, because if I don't do something about this now, it's going to eat me alive. And what better way to face your trauma than by making it art? God, I'm such a faggot. So like I said before, I'm not really confused about my sexuality. Let's start at the beginning, where my oldest memory was of a magical bliss, which awoke me to my primal, innate desires that revealed to me the beauty of love and lust. I watched Sailor Moon for the first time and knew I was gay because I wanted to hump Tuxedo Mask, which not only makes me super gay right out of the womb, it also kind of makes me a hussy. I was like 4, but even though I was never really confused, growing up in a Midwestern suburb in the 2000s, I didn't really know what being gay was. I just knew that it was seen as freakish behavior that would make everyone think that I'm strange. So I told people that I was straight like all the other boys, just serving the most heteronormative fantasy you could imagine. Which, to no one's surprise, nobody bought it. Cut to 8th grade, I found out what YouTube was and came across Luan Legacy, which probably none of you know who that is, but basically, he was an OG YouTuber from 10 years ago that was also gay and Asian. And seeing someone like me, who I could also look up to be unapologetically himself, helped me undo the numerous amount of chains and locks I put on my closet. And that's all it really took for me to be honest with what I always knew I was. A gigantic homo. Honestly, all I really needed at that point was a light tap on the shoulder for me to make that jump. It's like, this is the closet, and this is me about to come out of the closet. Just right on the edge of the closet. If I wiggled my feet a little, I would be out of the closet. Now, unbound by the chains that I set for myself with my newfound freedom, I went on a total rampage of coming out to all of my friends because I felt that it was important that the people around me knew my truth instead of believing this Oscar-winning performance of this straight heteronormative character that I've created. So I'd come out to them and their response was mostly along the lines of, "We already know, gay, tell us something we don't know." It was very anticlimactic. Coming out to my Gen Z friends, that was the easy part. When I came out to my family, that was when everything went to shit. Usually when someone comes out to their family, they usually think about whether or not they'll actually be accepted by their parents, how their relationships will change, whether or not it's even safe for them to come out. You know, valid concerns. But I didn't do that. One of my friends told me that you need to come out to your family. And being the Libra sun that I am, I just went with it. I wasn't a really deep thinker back then. I was 14. You're basically just a walking ball of hormones and puberty at that age. No 14-year-old has a well-developed frontal cortex. And yes, I do know what a frontal cortex is because I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. This was a good decision that I don't regret. Take that, mother! So when I made the decision to come out to my family, I started looking up videos to get advice and see what I'm getting myself into. And again, because I was a hormonal teenager with a non-existent attention span, I didn't do that much research, and my biggest takeaway was that I should do it in a car because my parents would be too busy to freak out or beat my ass. So on this one random summer day going back home from the grocery store, I decided to tell my mother the truth and change the course of our relationship forever. I started off by saying, "Mom, you know how I was different from all the other boys and how I was really into Sailor Moon?" To which she responded with, "Yeah? What are you saying?" Which meant she knew exactly what was coming. So I stopped beating around the bush and finally told her, "Mom, I'm gay. I like boys." I remember seeing people talk about their parents going ballistic over hearing this news. Crying, screaming, throwing out everything they had that was girly. But my mom went completely silent. All she told me was that she was devastated and needed time to think. When we got home, I told my dad, and he looked visibly disappointed in me, which honestly isn't that different from how he usually is. He's still visibly disappointed in me now. So basically, my dad stayed the same, and my mom didn't talk to me for a week. When she eventually did, she said I needed to go to our family doctor for a checkup. It wasn't a checkup. When our family doctor came into the room, she sat down, let out this huge sigh, turned to us, and said to me, "So, my mom tells me that you're gay." And it went just as bad as you think it did. My sweet 4'10" Vietnamese mother tricked me into going into the Minute Clinic to see if there was a medical fix for my sexuality. She bawled her eyes out. She asked if there was a pill. She cried, saying she just wanted her boy back. It was like I was on a dramatic episode of Glee. And this was the start of me realizing that my mother was going insane, because she acted like she was completely blindsided by this and had no way of seeing this coming. And from there, it just kept going more downhill. My whole life up to this moment, I went to church on a weekly basis since birth. I felt like this church was a second family to me. I grew up with all these people, and that made it all the more crushing when they rejected me as well. The reason why my mother was so against my sexuality is because of the way she grew up, and her religious beliefs made her believe that if I was this way, I would be sent to eternal damnation, something she shared with this community. So of course, they supported her in every way they could in trying to fix me and brought in anti-gay speakers to church. My friends' parents would talk to their kids and they'd tell them to be careful around me, otherwise they'd catch my affliction. The first time my dad actually had an active reaction about any of this was when people from church came up to him, told him that they were sorry after hearing the news, like I was sick. And that same night, he told me if I was gonna be like this, he didn't want me, which he always says the worst things he can think of, and it always ends up being an empty threat, but it still hurt. Then, with my mother continuing to believe that she was doing the right thing, started to pray and read the Bible every night, which I knew because she would always tell me whenever I saw her. I think the climax of all of this was when she caught me jacking off to gay porn and had this insane mental breakdown where she started shaking, bawled her eyes out, just kept screaming and pointing at me, repeatedly saying she sees the devil over and over again. Then after that, my mom got Geek Squad to put a maturity lock on my laptop that I immediately got rid of because I know how to use a computer, forced me into conversion therapy, and made me meet with Oprah Winfrey guest and conversion specialist Janet Boynes, who told me that the world was going to erupt in hellfire and that I'd be punished for all of eternity if I didn't go on the righteous path of being straight and Christian at my local Mexican eatery, El Rodeo. Their justification for doing all of this was that if I didn't change, I would just stay a monster that deserved to suffer. They told me if I was gay, I would be punished, I would die of AIDS, and I would be sent to hell. The worst was when they told me that if I didn't change, I was going to become a rapist because they've heard of stories of men being raped by other men, and asked me, "Do you want to be like that?" This was the level of insanity that I was working with. You can't reason with people who have completely lost their minds. So to sum it up, the people I saw as my home rejected and excluded me on the basis that I was a monster, a freak of nature, which, don't get me wrong, I am a freak of nature, so they're right about that. But vilifying me as a monster for simply existing and trying to be honest with myself, that caused me pain. And that pain became my turning point in life. When I was younger, I used to put people's happiness before my own. I would do anything to make other people happy because that's what made me happy. I felt like I was meant to live for other people, which made seeing my mom suffer because of me that much harder to deal with. I thought of why my mom took this so hard, and I think it boiled down to her feeling like a failure of a mother based on her cultural and religious beliefs. I know this isn't exactly specific to Vietnamese culture, but traditionally, there's a strong emphasis that the man needs to be the breadwinner and needs to focus on working to provide. And the woman's is to take care of the family, raise the children, and maintain the household. And in Christianity, you know, there's people that cite the Bible to view gays as these immoral people that will undoubtedly face divine punishment and eternal hellfire. Which of course makes sense because the universal teachings and messages of love don't apply to the gays. It was God's mistake that I have a G-spot in my asshole. Also, leaving her entire life in Vietnam to come to America and start over was a lot. When she moved over here, she didn't even know English, and she had to learn it from TV shows like Friends. And I can only imagine how difficult and scary that must have been. So finding this Vietnamese church, a community full of people that understood her based on a religion that gave them all hope, I can only see her viewing this church as her cherished family, caring about what they thought and also thought like them. And unfortunately, most of them grew up with the same view that homosexuality is of wrong and freakish nature. So when her son ended up becoming a homo freak, I believe she did what she did because of the unbearable shame that she felt. Speaking as the abomination, the shame I felt from that, I could only imagine what the creator of the abomination must have felt. And knowing that I caused my mother overwhelming shame that drove her to insanity, I felt incredibly guilty. Which I wouldn't have cared about if she was a terrible person, but she's one of the greatest people I know. She's kind and selfless. She's given me everything. And she loves me in a way that I'm scared of having one day. So even though at first I was a normal emotional teenager about everything and said things like, "I hate you, Mom, you guys are literally insane," after I understood her pain more, I just went along with everything she wanted because I wanted her to be happy. I even contemplated being straight, but I knew that wouldn't work, so I just decided to try not love anyone. To do these things to make my mother happy, I had to ignore my feelings, and that's when I started to dissociate as a coping mechanism. Even during those insane moments where my mom broke down and I was being treated like a walking infection just waiting to happen, I didn't really feel anything. In the beginning, I was more frustrated and angry, but eventually I just felt numb. I ended up feeling so outside of myself that I never really felt like I knew what I was feeling. I think I was just so tired of everything at that point that the easiest thing to do for everyone was to turn off my emotions. So I did everything I could to distract myself and try to feel something. And being the goody two-shoes that I was, my drugs of choice were League of Legends, masturbating, and Netflix, which, after scouring the app constantly, I came across Ugly Betty. And this might be a lot for you, so strap in, but I believe Ugly Betty was what truly saved me at this point in my life. For those of you that don't know about this national treasure, Ugly Betty is an American dramedy based on a telenovela about an aspiring writer named Betty, who would have thought, who gets her first major break working for a fashion magazine because her playboy boss needs to have an assistant that he won't have sex with. And Betty, being someone who doesn't care about her looks, working in this dog-eat-dog world of fashion, gets bashed by everyone at the magazine for her outfit choices and eating food. Even if it made people upset and resent her, seeing her persevere throughout all of this for her dreams made it finally click for me. I realized I was unhappy. There are times when happiness is at the cost of others, and me trying to make other people happy was at the cost of mine. If I wanted my family to be happy, I would have to become someone else. I would have to live a lie, I wouldn't be able to fall in love, and even though I was willing to go to these lengths for their happiness, they didn't care about mine. They didn't care about my suffering, and that's not love. That's just fucking unfair. I realized that life tests you with times where your happiness is being taken away from you, and a happy ending becomes something that you have to fight for. I realized that for me to be happy, I need to be able to love, I need to be able to do what I want with my life, and I need to be the one to take care of myself. For me to have that, I needed to stop being a doormat that let everyone walk all over him and become selfish. So I did. I stopped going with everything that my mother wanted. I stopped going to conversion therapy with her. I let her know that I'm not letting her change me and that I'm not okay with her hurting me anymore. I stopped going to church. I put most of my energy into taking care of myself and making myself happy. I started working harder at school. I got a 3.9 GPA from community college. That let me transfer into the U of M, one of the most prestigious universities in all of Minnesota that my parents have wanted me to get into since I was 10. They have very realistic dreams. I decided to become career-driven because I want to give myself the life that I want. A life filled with happiness that I've made for myself that no one can take away from me. I became the most important person in my life because life isn't a fairy tale where you just get handed a happy ending. I love who I've become and I don't want to go back. But the real question here is, after getting the fight back in me, why am I not okay? Why am I not okay? I just want to be okay. It's fine. Everything's fine. I want a burrito. Oinky oinky. So let me tell you why this homophobic moment ruined my life and why it makes me feel like a broken person. You know, the super fun, chill, laid back content you signed up for. Like I've said before, I like who I've become throughout this whole experience. I know that I'm a strong, independent, fierce human being that can take care of myself and can get things done when I actually do the hard work involved. Ew. But I'd also be lying if I said that I didn't internalize being compared to literal real-life monsters, being told that I'm not wanted, and being told that I'm an immoral demonic freak that belongs in hell. Which, that last one I can't really argue with, so fair enough. Up to this point, I only understood internalized homophobia resulting in people being ashamed of and denying their sexuality, which I never felt, so I didn't feel like this applied to me. Might as well just have a gigantic neon sign pointing at me saying "cum dump" everywhere I go. Blow up a gigantic billboard of me getting Eiffel Towered by 2 hunky beefcakes for all I care. I have nothing to hide. But, as Elon H. Meyer and Laura Dean puts it, internalized homophobia represents the gay person's direction of negative social attitudes toward the self. And while this can cause a gay person to be ashamed of and deny their sexuality, internalized homophobia can manifest in low self-esteem and self-worth, loneliness, being terrible at relationships, and mental health issues. So basically, I'm being read to complete filth here. I feel like this self-hatred has created this voice in my head that fills me with these feelings of worthlessness, bitterness, misery, and resentment screaming at me every day of my life. Let's talk about it. When I finally started standing up for myself, I realized that what these people said and did to me filled me with this uncontrollable rage. And my answer to this rage was by denying everything they were saying about me by achieving this undeniable version of success that would make them feel like inferior worms to me by comparison. And to my surprise, I was actually taking some of the steps to get there. I got good grades, I got into one of the top universities in the state, which filled in the cracks of my shattered heart and made me start to finally feel content with myself. Because these people who denied me started looking at me with respect. And then I threw all of that away because I figured out I want to be an entertainer. And the only rational explanation I can offer to why that is because, what is life if I can't dream these dreams that make life feel like life? Also, I'm stupid. And trust me, as anyone paying me any of the attention that I so desperately crave knows, my entire entertainment career has been nothing but failure at this point. I moved to California, commuting 3 hours back and forth, putting all of my blood, sweat, and tears into an unpaid internship that offered me a position with a wage of $12 an hour in one of the most expensive cities in the world, making me want to move back to Minnesota so I could live a comfortable life trying to make it on YouTube. Which I'm not succeeding at, because when you first start out at something, aren't you always just shit at it? My first attempt at videos where I was a 23-year-old trying to imitate Emma Chamberlain, those were the darkest times of my life. And the only videos that I really have to be proud of are sketches based on fart jokes that get like 20 views. Because being an entertainer, you live years, maybe a lifetime full of failure, as people see you desperately claw at your delusional attempts while they think to themselves, thank God I'm not Bobo the Clown over there. And this period of my life, I'm not taking too well, because it kind of ruins the revenge plot that I've been holding for 11 years to keep my sanity together. Being an entertainer is a terrible life path if you're seeking envy and respect, unless you're at the level of like Jennifer Lawrence or James Charles. No one's looking at me in a piggy onesie holding a Kakashi Sensei body pillow and thinking, wow, he looks like he really has his life together. I know everyone faces failure in their life, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm just really shit at dealing with it. I think what's made me content for all these years is that I was always trying and never really felt like I failed. I was in a constant state where I was proving to everyone and myself that they were wrong about me. But when I hit this wall, it made me think that maybe they're right. And it brought me back to feeling like everyone would look at me like I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm a failure that will never amount to anything. And why would anyone bother to love someone like me who's going nowhere and is just a burden? A place that I swore I'd never go back to and that I'm constantly trying to get out of. But even though I'm constantly trying, I'm always worried about whether or not people are thinking these terrible things about me. But what makes it so much worse this time is that I believe them. And that's when I started to spiral. What I mean by spiraling is that sometimes I get into this endless loop where all I can think about are these self-defeating thoughts about myself for hours and hours, to the point where it feels like I'm in pain. If I try to describe the intensity of these spirals, I'd say that it feels like my brain becomes a broken record player that keeps playing this painful screeching sound over and over again with no end in sight. The sheer agony of these spirals are paralyzing. In these moments, all I felt like I could do was lay down while I was in this horrifying state of mind for hours. And it's so weird explaining this because it's my own brain, and you'd think that if I wanted to, I could stop thinking like this, especially if it was causing me pain. But the thing is, even though I so desperately wanted nothing more than for it to stop, and I kept telling myself to, I just kept hurting myself with these terrible thoughts. And I guess I have to start this off by saying I'm not a suicidal person. I don't condone it. I don't think I'd ever do it. But in moments like these, I thought the only way to get myself to stop thinking like this was only drastic things, like getting hit by a car. And the first time this happened, I wish I got hit by a car. I know it sounds so stupid explaining this because it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical at all, but it kept happening. And it didn't stop at these big life moments, or even when I felt like I made a cringy YouTube video that got like 2 views. It also happened whenever I just felt like a burden or felt really insecure about myself. Like when I lost my wallet on a vacation with friends and I felt like I ruined everyone's trip by making them worry about me and make them feel like they had to take care of me. Or basically whenever I felt chubby. Living like that is hot garbage, and it completely sucked all the joy out of my life. I felt so exhausted after every time this happened, and it felt especially scary even when a couple days after, I felt dead inside. Usually after these spirals, nothing I enjoyed would make me feel anything. Video games, movies, anime, TV shows, Fight Club, kidnapping puppies in the dead of night, everything that used to spark joy in me that I used to do in my spare time did nothing for me. I knew that at the core of this, it was because I felt like a failure, so I compensated by trying to put more and more of my time into making YouTube videos. I rejected hanging out with friends more, I started pulling all-nighters, but even though I felt like I was spending more and more time into it, I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, I was getting more frustrated, and I started to hate creating too. And it would take a couple days for me to snap out of this. It scared me because whenever this happened, I felt like I lost myself and didn't know who I was anymore. Sis was having an identity crisis. This state of misery made me feel at times that I was 2 different people. On the one hand, there's the normal JoJo, who I feel like I used to be and want to be. Someone who's funny, smart, confident, charismatic, fun, beautiful, super fucking humble. I've developed this identity by putting this pressure on myself to make people happy and laugh. It gives me a sense of purpose. I want to be the entertainer. I mean, who wouldn't want to be the life of the party? Everyone likes the life of the party. The life of the party is someone who is loved, adored, envied, fun to be around, and is always happy. It's the part of me that I actually like. So I didn't like being sad or angry, because if I couldn't be the life of the party, who was I? I was very resolved to push away all of these feelings of anger and misery whenever they would come up so I could continue being the entertainer. I was able to keep this up for a pretty long time. There was a period of time where every free moment I had where I wasn't busy and had time to actually think for myself, for some reason, the painful memories of my past would resurface, and then I'd just start crying. Sometimes they got pretty intense. Like, I remember the first time I started to think about everything after it actually happened. It was just such a strong and emotional moment for me that I started to sob and scream hysterically as I was clutching and shaking the wheel of my Honda Accord at a Barnes & Noble parking lot at 6 p.m. It was batshit insane. To give you guys a better picture, here's what it looked like. It was a lot. After that, I acted like nothing happened, and I was like, I should get Chipotle. And I continued to live like this for another 3 years. And I know now that this is a pretty big red flag that I should seek help, and that I probably could get a lot from therapy. But at the time, I was okay living like this, because it would only happen when I was with myself, it would end, and nobody knew about it. So it was like this miserable version of JoJo never existed, and I continued to live this facade that I've created for myself. but you can't really perform when you fall into episodes of crippling despair. And this other person I became was my worst nightmare. I was so scared that the life of the party JoJo was nothing but a lie, and that the truth is that I'm nothing but a sad, miserable black hole of a person where everything he touches turns into misery. I didn't want anyone to see or know that I could be like this, because that just sounds bad, not really a good time. So even when something would set me off into a spiral and I couldn't help but be like this with other people, basically whenever I couldn't just go home and deal with it in private, oh my god. And when this happened, my friends could obviously tell there was something wrong with me, and they talked to me to make sure I was okay, but I tried my best to not let them in and deal with it alone. Because even though the facade I put up was gone and I was being a bummer already, I thought that maybe I could minimize the damage I'd done, and hopefully, after months of not seeing me, they'd forget about it. I wanted to do everything I could to make it seem like this other sad, miserable black hole version of myself didn't exist. Because who would want to be around that? People do not like miserable black holes. People do what they can to avoid them. And I don't blame someone for wanting to avoid a miserable black hole like me. So I was really resolved to isolate and deal with these issues by myself, even if these periods became more frequent and the loneliness just added to the pain, because it's scary to rely on others. As a Capricorn moon, I feel like it'd be my worst nightmare to depend on anyone for anything. 1, it makes me feel weak and pathetic, and 2, who can really take care of you but yourself? I just find a lot of comfort in dealing with things by myself. So I got into this terrible cycle of spiraling into hating myself, feel dead inside, and feel lonely from isolating myself, just all around miserable, living a life where I was going in and out of these periods for about 5 months. And I know that you're thinking, okay, that sounds terrible. Why didn't you get help about it sooner, you idiot? Well, I never really did anything about it because I was hoping every time it happened, it would be the last. It wasn't until it started happening more frequently that I came to my breaking point. And it all came to a climax when I was at school on my birthday. I opened up Snapchat and I saw that my ex-roommate wished every one of her friends that had a September and October birthday a happy birthday, except me. I know, I hate this just as much as you do. I'm going to keep the story brief because I'm such a faggot that I could probably write a whole novel about our friendship. But long story short, I felt really connected to Samantha in a way that I didn't feel in a very long time. And I know that I'm talking about her in a way that makes her sound like she's a lover. She's not a lover, she's just a really good friend and I'm sentimental. But I truly considered her a best friend. We shared similar senses of humor, we liked the same things, we had similar career aspirations. It was always fun when we were together. I even got to the point where I cried in front of her and was vulnerable with how sad I was. Because this was when I was in California, commuting 3 hours back and forth to my unpaid internship. And I had a lot of time to think for myself in that damn car and was always crying. And opening up to someone in that way is a lot to me. And it always meant so much to me that she was nothing but kind and listened. Even when I didn't think I was the greatest friend to her at the time and deserved any of it. She was just truly a great person. And even though we were distant, I was hoping in the back of my head that maybe she felt the same way I felt about her. Again, not lovers. And when I saw that she didn't say happy birthday to me, all I could think about was how I screwed up, how she probably made a good choice in not trying with me, and that I don't blame her for doing that. And that's why I started to spiral in class. It was after this moment I realized I couldn't live a life where I could spiral from doing something as simple as opening up a Snapchat story no matter where I was in the middle of the day, and I finally listened to what my friends, the internet, professionals, my brain, and common sense have been telling me what I should have done a long time ago. Go to therapy. Now where were we? Right, we were talking about me realizing I had to make a serious life change after I had a mental breakdown over someone forgetting about my birthday. Let's deal with it at the source. Homophobia. Being treated as if I'm somehow less than other people, and at times demonized based on my sexual orientation, has been nothing more than a demoralizing attack on my character that I have let shape everything that I am and everything that I have done for the past 11 years. Feeling rejected and betrayed by people I saw as my family made me believe the world is a lonely and cold place where you only really have yourself. It created this hole in me that I needed to fill by proving to these people that they were wrong about me and by never showing weakness again. And this determination to prove myself has been the primary driving force for most of my life. It's the reason why I work hard. It's given me something to fight for, a sense of purpose. And while coming to these answers were ultimately what helped me move forward and was what gave me solace all these years, after all the introspection I've been doing, I've come to realize that centering your entire life around your trauma isn't really healthy. And I should probably do something about it. The first place I need to start is by understanding that I don't need to live a life where I need to prove anything to anyone. I've always been so desperate to prove to these people that they're wrong about gay people and myself, but it's done nothing but hurt me to seek validation in other people's opinions of me, especially when those opinions are full of shit. Whenever I think back to any of these people's arguments that they used against me, I usually find that they lack this thing called common sense, and I always find myself feeling insane even having to argue any of it. Are you sure you want to be gay? Gay people are addicted to drugs. Do you want to be addicted to drugs? We know someone who got raped by a gay guy. Do you want to be like him? Do you want to be a rapist? Okay, so being gay has nothing to do with any of these things. It only means I want Chris Evans to suffocate me with his dirty, sweaty, Captain America trained gym feet. Quarantine's been really hard, guys. Anyways, I'm not addicted to drugs. There are straight people that are addicted to drugs. Being gay does not mean I'm going to be addicted to drugs. I only do them for fun and like once in a while. Also, I'm not a rapist, and I don't see how my sexual orientation has anything to do with that. This is just so fucking stupid, oh my god. God doesn't want you if you're gay. I'm only saying this because I don't want you to burn in hellfire and get anally penetrated by Satan's trident for all eternity. Okay, first of all, I get that religion is a very spiritual, personal matter. I'm not a really spiritual person, so I don't really get it, and I haven't really dove into the topic that much to fully understand it. But for the Christians who want to use their religion to back their homophobic beliefs, I don't really think it's right to do so. And yeah, I know that the Bible has a verse about homosexuals not inheriting the kingdom of God or whatever, but what I'd argue towards using this as a valid reason to condemn the LGBT+ community is that neither God nor Jesus, the actual divine beings, wrote this. Paul did. There were 40 people that wrote the Bible. So what exactly gives these other people the authority to tell others what to do and think? Because if they're human, doesn't that mean that they're just as flawed? I, in fact, agree with Paul himself, that what makes more sense, at least as I interpret it, is that the Spirit is what's truly righteous, not what's written. As he writes, he has made us competent as ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. And also, if we have to take everything at face value, does that mean we have to follow every other problematic thing in the Bible? Just my opinion. But I don't think it makes sense that an all-loving God and a religion based on love condemns a group of people for something that isn't inherently evil. Moving on. If we accept the gays, what will stop us from accepting incest? Okay, if any of this wasn't absurd enough, now we're talking about incest. Just because LGBT+ people are valid does not mean it's okay to fuck your mom. Relax. If you're gay, you're just going to live a terrible life, and I just want what's best for you. Well, I don't think my sexuality has anything to do with it. I think it's more of these things being said to me and honestly me. But I am living a terrible life, so I can't really argue with that. What my point is that most of these arguments don't make any sense, and all of them are unreasonable. I believe Sarah Schulman describes the sentiment perfectly. They, homophobic family members, speak and act in ways that reinforce the idea of gay people as special interest. In many ways, the message is clear, that the gay person is not fully human. but because many gay people know others who have been more severely punished by their family's prejudices, they look on their own continued compromised inclusion to be miraculously positive and a product of their own correct behavior. The manifestations of familial homophobia can take many forms. Some families entirely and thoroughly exclude gay and lesbian members through outright ban. Some allow them a partial participation, provided that the person never shows or discusses his or her own life. Some allow a lover to be present as long as that person is not fully acknowledged in his or her actual role. Some allow full physical participation by the gay person and their lover, but constantly enforce a clear message that they are not as important as the heterosexuals in the family, and/or that their relationship is lesser than heterosexual relationships or the consequence of pathology. Some rely on repeated humiliations and diminishments. Some enforce the above with more degrees of subtlety. None of these possibilities are acceptable or reasonable. All have long-term destructive effects on the gay person, as their diminishment is regularly reinforced. That gay people have to tolerate this or be complicit with it in order to be loved is very distorting. I couldn't agree with this more myself, because at the end of the day, no matter how much they believe homosexuality is wrong, it's not what's harmful. What's harmful is spreading this message of condemning and hatred towards a group of people over things that they can't control that are just and honest. And even if people try to reason these kinds of words and actions by saying it's because they love you or want what's best for you, nothing changes the fact that belittling and degrading other people, treating them as if they're subhuman, is not love. It's disgust. It's the disgust that gives birth to hatred and violence towards the LGBT+ community that is what isn't okay, not the other way around. It's rejecting someone for who they are and who they love. And I do understand that the more effective way of working against these beliefs is coming from a place of compassion instead of rage. I can try to reason with these people, understand why they think the way they do, and disagree with them to help people be better. But seeking reason and understanding from these people is not what I need to be working towards. What I need to do about this is to work on undoing the damage that living the way I have has been causing me. Because internalizing this hatred to the point where I become self-destructive is just as insane as these people's toxic beliefs about the LGBT+ community. Because even if I fail, even if I suck sometimes, even if I make mistakes and I'm far from perfect, that doesn't mean any of the things these people say and think about me are right. It just means that I'm human, and I don't have to hate myself for that. What has been making me suffer was centering my life around this anger and hatred that I felt for the past 11 years that I've directed towards myself. And the first step I need to take in fixing that is to accept that I'm a resentful, emotional wreck that doesn't know what I'm doing, because it's okay to be a weak, flawed, miserable person who's just trying his best to be better. And I want to keep trying, so I'm going to, because I don't want to always feel like I'm always on the verge of breaking down and reverting to the sad little boy inside. I think counseling really helped because it trained my brain to work around these self-destructive behaviors, so I'm gonna go back to therapy. When I journal and meditate like my counselor suggested, it actually helps, so I guess I should take more of their advice and do it more. I'm also going to make more time to have fun, because that's what makes life worth living, and I deserve it. I've also found it to be great actually having healthy relationships with my friends and family, so I'm going to try to spend more time with them and be more vulnerable with them, or whatever. Most importantly, keep using whatever technique I can to get out of these spirals, because there's literally no point in getting into that way of thinking. And I'm not saying I know the cure-all to depression and that I'm the best at doing any of this. Oh, far from it. I don't journal all the time. I basically spiraled like yesterday, and honestly, I wouldn't have told even my closest friends about any of this if it wasn't for me having a mental breakdown in front of them after taking shrooms. And I know some of you might be watching this and think it's getting into the cringe category of self-help videos that's trying to shove down your throats that all you need to do to be happy is to buy into the seemingly fake, over-the-top, blind positivity that makes you feel like you're lying to yourself. And I get that because that's what I thought about all of this too. I always prided myself for being logical and rational, for seeing the world how it really is. But it's not logical to believe that the world is constantly against you. While there's a truth that we will always feel pain, it's also true that it's important to take care of yourself by allowing yourself kindness, a healthy level of optimism, and allowing yourself to love and be loved. Also, if I don't do this, this will keep happening. Ew.
Why doesn't anything in my life just go right?
If that booger was in my nose this entire video, I'm gonna kill myself. I love that I can't even see, so I have to put on my glasses on to make sure I see the frame right. And the only rational, I sound like a broken record player. Ah! Glasses again!